All right, happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully everybody's had a nice week, getting in the fall swing of things, starting to feel spooky, all that. So let's talk metabolic adaptation. You know, metabolic adaptation is the cause for your plateau. It's the reason why you stop losing weight. It's the reason why most people fail and most people give up. So let's dive into it a little bit. So first off, we got to define what metabolism is, because you know, you ask a fitness guy, it's going to be one answer. You ask a pharmacologist, it's going to be a completely different answer, talking about, you know, metabolites and things excreting and clearing the body and shit like that. When we're talking about metabolism from the sense of, from the fitness sense, we're talking about energy expenditure in a day, burning and using of food and energy and things like that. So with metabolic adaptation, your metabolism downregulates due to prolonged energy restriction. So the easiest way I can explain metabolic adaptation is like power saving or low battery mode on your cell phone, where you're just trying to conserve energy. What's up, Mike? How's everything? So this happens when you initiate weight loss through energy restriction. Now, you would think that energy expenditure would go down because you're becoming a smaller person with less active tissue to maintain. But with metabolic adaptation, you get an extra reduction in the expenditure past what we would calculate mathematically. So, you know, it's like an energy conservation mode, or like a gradient or a dimmer switch. So as fat loss becomes more pronounced in the body, your body initiates changes to try to conserve energy as much as possible. So as far as as a human being, you have a few biological non-negotiables: energy, ATP, water, oxygen, things like that. Those are the non-negotiables. Those are things that have to happen. Now, the body slows down if you're short on energy, and the slowing down is, you know, this sounds a little bit morbid, but like, your body tries to slow down the process of starving to death. So again, you know, our bodies aren't made to look awesome in a bathing suit and look awesome taking your shirt off. Our bodies are made for survival. Now, in terms of the factors that cause metabolic adaptation, is it the magnitude of the deficit? Is it the duration of the deficit? It's actually both of those things. But the biggest driver of metabolic adaptation is the hormone called leptin. Now, in terms of most of the stuff biologically and weight loss and all the things in the body, the processes physiologically, you know, most of the stuff that we deal with, we've known about for 200 plus years. They've been researched in depth, things like that. In terms of leptin, we didn't discover leptin until 1990. So definitely in terms of what we understand about this, it's in its infancy. And I would compare that to like gut health. In terms of what we know about gut health, that's also in its infancy. Now, what is leptin? Leptin is produced by your fat cells. They're the thing that tells the hypothalamus in your brain whether it's full or needs more energy. It pretty much gives your brain an update on how things are going. Now, your hypothalamus coordinates everything. It gets the message, and then it kind of downstreams and coordinates what your body and how your body's going to react based on that status. Now, the impact on leptin is the thing that is going to drive metabolic adaptation. And again, I'll reiterate that the severity of deficit has an impact, the amount of deficit has an impact, but the amount of fat mass is the main driver. Because if we wanted to induce leptin, we could have you fast and you get hungry as shit. So, you know, leptin is the thing that tells your body, it pretty much determines whether you're hungry or full, and tells you whether you should eat more or not. And another question we have, is it linear or exponential? So is it, you know, increase over time at an equal amount, or as you go deeper, does it get exponentially worse? And for most of the things we find, it does get exponentially worse. Now, a lot of people said, all right, so we figured out this leptin thing. So, you know, all we got to do is figure out a way to tell your body it has enough leptin, and then obesity solved, right? Problem, you know, done, all done, right? But it's not so easy, because high leptin has a much more, a greater effect than low leptin. And then people who have high body fat have extremely high leptin levels. So with that in mind, we would think that, you know, when you have super high levels of leptin, it would just say, hey, stop eating, right? But it's not that easy, because we become resistant. Just the same way we become like insulin resistant, our body becomes desensitized. So like we get so used to it, we get the signal and our body's like, ah, fuck it, we're good. You know, so low leptin is a much more impactful situation. So like, you know, when your leptin is low, your body's like, holy shit, we're going to fucking die. You know, so we need to eat. Hunger is going to go through the roof, thing like that. When the leptin's high, your body's like, ah, whatever, we've seen this before, you're doing fine. So, you know, it will kind of let it go and get worse. So it depends. So low leptin, your body's going to panic. High leptin, it'll panic at first, but if you go through it, it's just going to be like, whatever. Now, now we look at acute responses to energy restriction. And now we know what is a large deficit. You know, in the fitness world, you know, it's like, oh, am I going to cut on 2,300 calories or am I going to cut on 2,200 calories? So like, you know, the deficit in the fitness world is like 300 to 500 calories, you know, which is legitimate. But in like the research and medical world, you know, they're like, all right, we're going to have 700 calories a day for 12 weeks. We're not changing anything. Just have these 2 shit drinks, maybe eat some sand. You're good, right? But also, the medical world pays no attention to what happens after the diet. So in the medical world, every single person gets fatter afterwards. Now, another thing we have to look at is the deficit versus what your maintenance calories are. So say like a person has a maintenance calorie level of like 1,500 calories a day. You do a 1,000 calorie deficit with that to bring down to 500. Now you're going to start looking at your plate like, the fuck my food go? You know, as opposed to say you weigh like 400 and your maintenance calories are crazy high, you know, a 1,000 calorie deficit isn't going to be that significant. So something you still need to look at. And, you know, even with these big deficits, we got to make sure we're still getting enough protein and fiber, and that leaves little room for anything else. So another thing we got to look at in terms of metabolic adaptation and the maintenance of muscle. So at like a 500 calorie deficit, we see that usually you preserve your muscle. When we go over 500 calorie deficit a day, we're going to start to lose muscle for sure. But it also comes down to a personal experience. So like, you know, we look at a 1,000 calorie deficit for 18 weeks or something like that. That level of misery is awful. You know, nobody wants to go through that. So we got the physiological versus practical sense of how it's going to go. And, you know, a lot of people try to do too much of a deficit. They have a bad experience and they never try dieting again. And even a lot of times when people reach their goal weight, it's so miserable. They're like, I don't want to go through that shit again. And they cut fitness out of their life forever. But on somebody on like a good solid diet, you know, somebody that's, you know, has somebody washing them or helping them out and get through that at, you know, 400 or 500 calories of energy restriction with the right types of food, high volume foods, where they still feel full, you're like, oh, okay, I can do this again. So the experience you have definitely plays a role. Now, for a long time, people talked about body fat set points, and, you know, nobody really jives with that anymore. But at the same time, you know, all of our bodies prefer to stay within a body fat range. And then the leaner you become, or when you come closer to the threshold of the bottom end of that, that's when metabolic adaptation really starts to kick in. You know, it's you know, like a point of no return. And I've experienced this many times in my life where, you know, I hit a certain level of leanness and I'm just sick every day. So, you know, and the worst time where this gets really bad and kind of stays with you, where, you know, I see tons of men that just eat way too few calories, you know, like the post I made this morning with, there's a lot of like 200-pound guys that are maintaining their weight at 1,500 calories while doing an hour of cardio a day. That's freaking awful. So, you know, when you push past the threshold, that's when shit really gets bad. And that's when it's going to take a really long time to recover. And, you know, I'm trying to reiterate this, that like, you know, if you've been in a calorie deficit for like a year, you might need a full year out of a deficit to bring your metabolism back to normal. And there's so many people that fall into this that have been starving themselves and eating such low calories for so long, and their metabolism is so damaged, there's like no coming back. And then another thing we can look at is the long-term effect on the settling range. So we look at that range. So say like your homeostatic body fat percentage is like 15%. But over time, between training and lifestyle intervention, you know, when we get lower body fat, so does over time, does your body feel like it's at 15% when it's 11%? You know, that's something that a lot of research has to look into, but it's very hard to do research because it's kind of subjective. So, you know, there's physiology and there's psychology. So in terms of the psychology, you know, if you've like dieted down to say 8% and it feels like shit, and then like later on you diet down to 8% again, you're used to it. You've seen this movie before. You know it's going to feel like shit. You know what to expect, so it'll be a less miserable experience. So it's really hard to diagnose that clinically, you know, because you're going by a feel. It's kind of similar to like testosterone ranges where like, you know, some people at 500 milligrams per deciliter feel awesome. Some people at 500 milligrams per deciliter feel like shit. So, you know, it's highly individual. So in terms of metabolic adaptation, over time, when you're in a deficit, your body conserves calories and it burns less. And again, our bodies are built for survival. That's why this happens. So again, if we go back a million years and our ancestors had to trek across the, I don't know, the freaking desert or some shit for 2 weeks and didn't have anything to eat, your body's going to do everything it can to keep you alive. So it's not going to burn the calories. It's going to conserve them and use them over a great period of time, as opposed to using them right now. Let me see what somebody's saying from Mike. Yep, that's pretty much it. So in terms of how do you prevent this from happening? So it's pretty much you do it in stages. And, you know, that's how I like to do with all my people. And it makes it less miserable. And it gives you time to break up your diet and feel a little better. So, you know, what I like to do is every 3 or 4 months of dieting, you need a month, maybe 2 of not dieting. You know, let your body settle, let it get used to the new body fat, and let it stay there and make it permanent. So, yes, it's definitely better to lose weight slowly. So pretty much the slower it happens, the more permanent it will be, because you're giving your body a chance to get used to it, as opposed to, you know, the faster you lose weight, the higher opportunity you have of bouncing back the other way when your metabolism is messed up. So what we want to do in terms of our diets, you know, 3-4 months of calorie restriction. Say we lose 20 pounds. We want to level off there. So take a month or 2 where we eat at maintenance, maybe pick a strength goal. You know, you keep your strength, you keep your muscle. So during that time, we'd switch to focus on strength training, keep your muscle. And then after a month or 2 or whatever we need, we'll jump back into a deficit. So, you know, say we lose 20 pounds in the maintenance phase, maybe we gain back 2 or 3, no big deal. So we go from 200 to 180. At the end of the maintenance phase, we're like 183. Once we hit that, we drop down to say 170 at our next diet interval for next 3-4 months. Then again, we go back to maintenance, we level off. Maybe we creep up to like 172. But by that point, our body is so used to this lower weight, that pretty much, you know, unless you're a real asshole about things, you know, and eat like complete dog shit for a period of time, you might have a problem. But even if your calories are high for a while, your body's going to be so used to having the better metabolism and being a lower weight that you might not be able to go over 175, 180 no matter what. So you want to like almost like keep resetting that set point at the top so you can keep going down over time. So like every year when you return to 170 pounds, hypothetically, you'll be leaner than you were the last time you were 170 pounds. So again, you know, this is a process. It's long-term. And, you know, as far as how metabolic adaptation works, prolonged periods of dieting, your body adapts and you get all messed up. And so many people fall into this, and so many people just keep dieting, keep trying to lose weight. And then they get in this position where like it's almost damn near impossible to lose weight again because, you know, their bodies just don't burn calories anymore because their bodies are so convinced they're going to die in a half hour. So again, I'll keep reiterating that. You want to lose fat in stages. Lose a little fat, hold it. Hold that position. Lose a little more, hold it. Otherwise, you'll go down, your metabolism will drop, your muscle mass will drop, and you set the table and put yourself in a perfect position for an incredible amount of weight regain. So again, you want to do this intelligently. You don't want to wing it. And, you know, if you're 20 years old, yeah, you'll have more leeway with, you know, messing up and being able to continue losing weight and keep lower body fat and make more mistakes and shit like that. But when you get up into your 40s, 50s, upper 30s, you know, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for those type of mistakes. And, you know, being in a deficit for too long can really set you back. And, you know, not only will you not be reaching your goals, but you're going to feel like shit. And nobody wants that. So otherwise, if you have any questions, hit me up. And again, this isn't a simple concept. You know, this is pretty deep. I'm trying to keep it as simple in layman's terms as possible without getting sciencey. But if you have any questions, you know, hit me up, or you feel like you're in this position now. And, you know, even people that know what they're doing are in this position. I'm pretty sure I've been in this position. Well, yeah, over this year, just because, you know, going in the end of 2023, I kind of was off the reservation for too long. So, you know, I was in a deficit for most of 2024. And, you know, I continued dieting from the end of June to the end of August. And between, you know, July and August, I really don't think I dropped much more body fat. You know, it's hard to tell. And then again, when I hit a certain level, I feel like shit, and nobody wants that. So the rebound is always enjoyable when you reintroduce some foods, reintroduce some carbs. Just, yeah, it's nice. You know, you don't want to suffer. There's no reason to do any of that. And again, you shouldn't be in a rush. You're not chasing time. You're chasing this result. And, you know, you don't want to mess yourself up and set yourself back in the long term. And in terms of setting yourself back in the long term, I see so many people doing this, whether it's lifting weights or the diet. And anytime you do too much of something, that you just set yourself back, you know, like I'm trying to tell some of these kids the same thing with, like, you know, the bench press, where all these kids are getting under this bench press and trying to lift a weight that's heavier than they can lift. And you don't understand how taxing that is on your body. You're trying to do something. You're trying to lift something that is more than 100% of what you can lift. So, like, you know, you keep trying to bench press 135 and you can only bench press 85, which I see all the time in the gym with these kids. I'm trying to tell them, like, you're like crushing your central nervous system. Like, you're setting yourself back months. Like, it's going to take so long for your body to recover from this, you know? You know, you want to do things that you can do. And as far as your goal setting, you know, you want to be ambitious enough to be excited, but also you need some reinforcement that things are going well. And, you know, constantly dropping the weight on your neck, that's not positive reinforcement. You know, that doesn't make you feel like eventually you're going to get there. So, you know, I don't know what people are thinking and why, like, logic just leaves their body when it comes to exercising or dieting. But be logical. You know, there's only so, you're a human being. There's only so much you can take, so much stress, things like that. And, you know, it's going to take away from your life performance. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to sleep like shit. So, again, if you need help with your diet, you got to do this thing in stages. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. And you just want to stay consistent over time. And that's what's going to get you there. It's not going to be going balls out for 2 months or 3 months. It's going to be consistency for a long period of time. And a lot of people have a messed up expectation of what it's going to take, because, you know, you take somebody that's already in pretty good shape to get in really good shape. For somebody that's already in shape, that might take 9 months. So for somebody that's completely out of shape, thinking they're going to be completely in shape in 3 months, you've lost your fucking mind. Like, you know, if you haven't worked out for 10 years and you took 10 years getting out of shape, and you think it's going to take 10 weeks to get in shape, you're greatly mistaken. And especially since now you're 10, 15 years older, it's not happening. So you got to be smart, do it over time. You know, keep your faith in the process, trust the process, and just keep going. And then know when you got to turn around, you got to pull the plug, listen to your body.
If you start feeling like shit, you start feeling sluggish, your sleep starts getting shitty, things like that, you're going to have to start reevaluating things. So otherwise, everybody have a nice weekend. Again, starting to feel spooky up in this bitch, all that. So have a nice weekend, everybody. Enjoy yourself, and just hit me up if you have any questions, and have a great weekend.